Today I want to introduce you to my warm halloumi salad. Now, this is on my website, fionaodonnell.ie, as a winter salad. I'm not really sure why I had it down as a winter salad, probably because I was just craving some veg, craving a salad, and it was the middle of the winter and I didn't have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm using broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, red cabbage, red onion, garlic, which I must get out, and some green beans. So I'm also going to add some cashew nuts in there, and I've got some baby potatoes steaming behind me. So I'm going to show you how to prepare it. It's very quick, very easy, and if like me, like I usually have lots of chopped veg in the fridge, when you get to the kind of the last day that they need to be used up, this salad is the ideal thing to make, to fire everything into a frying pan together and just cook this delicious meal up. So I'm going to get started. Okay, first things first, we're going to get our onion chopped and our garlic. We're going to get those into the pan and get them started. So just as you start chopping your onion, remember to get your pan on. Now, I've also found these, which are handy for the kitchen. You just pop them into your recycling bin or into your food bin, and they are biodegradable. So, one red onion. Now, when we look at vegetables, we all know they're good for us, right? We all know that they're lower in energy, they're less calorie dense than something like a bar of chocolate, but they are also far more dense in nutrients. So when we say they're better for us, they're actually providing nutrients we need for things like turning food into energy. And we're getting our carotenoids, or those phytonutrients, those things that make superfoods in our orange and red and purple veg. So those are the things that when we look at stuff that's non-essential, but that might contribute to us being a little bit healthier, having less overall inflammation, and maybe preventing some of the risk factors for things like cardiovascular disease and some cancers, these are what we're looking for. So now, again, depending on how garlicky you like things, I'll probably chop an extra clove of garlic to pop it in here. And for this dish, I like to chop the garlic crunchy, or not crunchy, chunky, because I like when it kind of caramelizes with the onions, and I like the flavor when you get one solid bit of garlic in a bite. Now remember that veg are very high in fiber as well. So if you're not used to eating vegetables, if you don't usually have a lot of vegetables in your diet, this is quite high in fiber. So of course, fiber helps to keep a healthy gut. It helps to provide a wonderful environment for a healthy gut microbiome. And so in that regard, I suppose we could call them prebiotics. So a good fiber intake would be about 30 grams a day, especially for athletes. Ensuring that you have a healthy gut can actually contribute to a healthy immune system. So fiber is the kitty. Now I'm going to pop a little bit of oil in here, and I'm going to pop in these. So you want to cook these on a low heat. You want them, I suppose, sweating a little bit as opposed to a really fast fry, because the amount or the volume of stuff that's going to go in here, you're going to want to be able to cook it all through. Second thing we're going to put in is our red cabbage. And you want to get that into the pan, ideally, as soon as possible after this stuff, as you can. Okay, so red cabbage, I absolutely love. And for some reason, I keep forgetting to buy it, or I don't buy it, probably because the amount of time it takes to prepare it. But if you have a mandolin, you can chop this in half and just grate it. Just for the purpose of today, I'm going to cut off a small portion and just chop it finely. Now, if there are any chefs out there watching this and cringing at my cutting skills, I apologise. Okay, so we're going to get those in as well. Okay, and we're going to allow those to soften down. Now, the next thing we're going to do, put all these to the side, is we'll chop our broccoli and cauliflower, and they're going to be going into the pot next. So I suppose what you're going to do is put in stuff in terms of how long it takes to cook, and certainly you want to chop these nice and small. Like this is probably too big, I chop that in half, and that just allows everything to cook through. So again, on those days that you're really craving some good, healthy food, this is just the most satisfying. And I pair it with halloumi because, especially if you're cycling in the heat at the moment, and I know we're in the middle of May 2020 and we're not cycling very far, but if you're getting out and you're doing your 5K routes in quick succession, and it's warm, or if you're running at the moment, you're losing a lot of salts in your running and your sweat. So halloumi is a nice food to replace all that sodium. When it comes to sodium, generally we don't have to work very hard at replacing it with, I know a lot of us probably take zeros, or you know, if I'm on the bike, if I'm doing a long cycle, I generally put some honey into warm water and add a pinch of salt, and that's my homemade solution instead of going out and buying anything. But generally we don't need to, because the amount of salt we eat on a day-to-day basis in our food, unless you really avoid any processed food, is generally enough to keep us going. Now, there has obviously been a bit of a shift away from eating processed food, so I myself aim to use tamari, and I use stuff like halloumi, so I know I'm getting in the salt that I need. And remember, sodium, all the messaging services in our bodies, sending messages along our spinal cord, messaging in our nerves, and indeed messaging in our muscles, the contractility is allowed because of sodium and how the sodium ions travel. So without sodium, or with low sodium, we would have poor contractility, we'd probably get cramping. Now, oh, that was purple from the, I thought my cauliflower was gone purple. Okay, so again, I'm going to cut that nice and small and thin, not big chunks. And you don't want big huge chunks of cauliflower on your fork either. You want to enjoy all the mixed flavours that are going to come together in this. Have a look at what's going on in the frying pan. Not much, because it takes this frying pan about 7 years to heat up. Okay, I'm going to turn that up a little bit and give it another moment. So in the meantime, I'm just going to chop down these a little bit. Okay, put them neatly in one pile, and we'll do our peppers. Nothing else over there that we've missed. This is a really colourful salad, and it's a real feast for the eyes. I'm going to pop my cashews in next, because before I put the rest of this stuff in, I'm going to put in a small drop of tamari, just to make sure these cashews get a little bit of flavouring on them. Now, adding cashews through something like that is really lovely, because as they're cooked they soften a bit, so they just offer again another little bit of texture. So when we're eating food, our brain favours different textures. That's why when you think of really nice chips that are crunchy on the outside and they're soft and fluffy on the inside, they're the ones we really enjoy to eat. That's why chip shop chips are so craved. So when you have veg, then everything can be a similar texture. So that's why it's important to have the nice soft caramelized onions. You've got your crunchy veg, you have caramelized on the outside and nice and soft on the inside with your beetroot. Again, you have the nice different texture with your cashews, and we're going then for the more meat-like texture of your halloumi. And of course, if you wanted to, you could, of course, have this, not with halloumi, but maybe with a smoked chicken or even beef if you preferred. So we're going to get some of this stuff into the pan. Now I just want to show you what I've done here. So I have all the stuff that's cooked down on this side, and I have my new veg here just to allow it to cook. So yeah, that's cooking there. Now we're going to chop the beetroot and the halloumi, and with that we're going to have some coriander and some lime. Okay, this veg is going to go in here too. Now, so I love cooking this in the griddle pan alongside the halloumi, and sorry now that's probably a little loud, because I squeeze my little bit of, where's it gone, my little bit of lime, it's over there, on top of these as well. It just gives that extra layer of flavour to the beetroot. Do not get this on your clothes. You probably know that already. Okay, so these organic guys are huge. So I'm going to slice them. Usually for something like this, I would cube them, but because I'm going to do them in the griddle pan with the halloumi, I'm just going to cut them in slices. Like that. And I always make too much so that I will have another portion to eat tomorrow. Double up on my cooking, or double up on my effort one day so that I have 50% of the effort required the following day. Okay, so I'm going to cut this over the sink as well. Now there's loads of halloumi on the market. It's quite salty. If you are restricting your salt intake, or if you don't like very salty food, the Macroom Buffalo halloumi I find is probably less salty than many of the ones you would get that have been imported from Greece. But you can also actually soak halloumi for an hour before you cook it. That will extract some of the salt for you, and just let it sitting then to let the water leach out for a little while. So if you haven't had halloumi before, it doesn't really melt, or if you haven't cooked with it before, it doesn't really melt. First it goes soft, and then some of the water comes out and evaporates, and then it goes really crispy really quickly. So be careful that you don't cook it too fast, and just make sure to cut it in nice chunky pieces, unless you want it as a kind of a topper on a salad, crumbled, like almost like a crouton-esque. In that case then you can just cut it really thin, and as I say, it goes really crispy. So this is our halloumi. We're going to get started on this in just a second. Okay, so this is looking really nice. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to squeeze a lime into it, and then I'm going to cover the pan, simply because I want the cauliflower and the broccoli to soften just a little, and I don't want them kind of staying too hard. Okay, now we're going to get out our griddle pan. Okay, so when you're cooking halloumi, you don't actually need to use any oil. I usually dry fry it in the pan, but in this instance, I am going to use a little bit of oil on my beetroot. So what I'm going to do is lay these out before I pop them in the pan, drizzle them with a little bit of oil. I'm going to pop some coriander on them, and then we're going to put lime juice in the pan when the pan is hot. In fact, oops, what you can do is pop a bit in your hands and just rub over. It was a little bit too much oil even for my standards. So I'm going to take some of that. We are going to do the beetroot first and then add in the halloumi. The halloumi cooks very quickly on a hot pan, and all you really want to do is heat it and sear the edges so it looks pretty. So I'm going to start clearing this stuff away, fast forward the video, and we'll get back to when the food is ready. Okay, I'm going to start getting this beetroot in the pan.